world and whatever time it is. Welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe, and it is Monday night, so it is connecting the world by stories. And tonight we are doing two worlds in one. We're exploring the difficulties and the triumphs and everything else of participation and access of it from the point of view of some of people with disabilities. Tonight we've got a mixture of people that are dealing with this themselves, David Thompson, all sorts of people, and those that are engaged in the work. And support Jackie, thank you very much. And so we will eventually, as soon as it's possible, we're having connection problems, but get up, what was it, Justine? What's it called?
We should have a live transcription auto enabled. So for those of you that need subtitles, hopefully, if the host can get it sorted, they will be up soon.
Hopefully, live transmission auto will be up. Little words on the bottom of the screen. But for now, I'm going to hand over to David, whose show it is tonight. So could we have a big round of applause for David Thompson, UK.
Everybody, welcome, Marvel over Expo, David over disability. And the story talking gathered that what I little boy that I made a little story.
I will, David. It'll be my pleasure. David wanted me to tell you about the lady who inspired him to be a storyteller and to love stories. And he first saw her, the only time he's seen her was when he was a young boy, and he went to the theatre with a group of people, and this Indian lady performed storytelling, dance and song, and she absolutely captivated him, and he's been a storyteller ever since, and a story lover too. So we've been trying to track down this lady, but unfortunately we haven't been able to find her yet. So if anyone knows an Indian storyteller who sang and danced a few years ago now, David, we'd love to hear from her.
Hello. Daughter like that now we are the older David. David got a story about the brother. People David speak about story. Can you tell about the little boy? As the boy got the border.
Over to you, David.
Oh, me. Hi. I'm David Thompson in the US. Yes, I'm back. Hey, hello, everybody. We're talking about the inclusion of disability in the arts. And particularly since we're storytellers, we're talking about the accessibility through story. I myself am disabled. I had polio as a child. And though I can still maneuver around pretty well, it's like, hey, it happens. It's life. But I have not stopped that from me allowing myself to enjoy the arts. In the last century, you all remember the last century, don't you? I think so. I did medical social work for 6 years. And I worked with people who we call, I hate the term, clients of our services, because we're not a business, but whatever. And I worked with people, and they were on my caseload who had different developmental disabilities or whatever. And I've heard from them many stories about, can I do this or can I do that, and things like this. So I created a small group of a story circle amongst the clients, again, I hate the word, of our daily living skills classes. So that's the agency had. And we had severe CP, deaf, blind, mentally challenged, intellectually challenged. We had Down syndrome, and then we had me. And so what we did was we shared stories. What was a meaningful story to you growing up? What did you hear? And many times it was the old, like Three Bears or, Jack and the Beans, rhymes and stuff. I said, let's talk about some higher level stories. And so we all got together. And one of my dear, dear, dear friends, who happened to be a client, was born blind. And he said, I have the best story for you. I just made it up. This is like 2 weeks later. And I want to share it with you. So I want to share Thomas's story with you. This is the story of Jade Dawn. Now, Jade Dawn was born right after the People's Revolution in the People's Republic of China. What people didn't realize, at least her neighbors and other outside of the family people, was that Jade Dawn was born blind. Now, what was she? How can we do this? I mean, she's a female, she's born blind, and so much is going on. How can she be included in society? How can she be included where she feels comfortable? And so it was that her parents, under the direction of her grandmother, who just happened to be one of the heroes of the Long March, if you know what that means, if not, look it up, he said to her, my darling, my granddaughter, do not pity yourself. Whatever you do, no, you cannot see with eyes, but you can hear with ears. You can feel with fingers. You can smell with your nose, and you can taste with your mouth. Come with me. So the grandmother took Jade Dawn by the hand outside and made a big mud pit, lots of mud, and began to teach Jade Dawn the art of being a clay sculptor. Well, her fingers and her feeling was so grand, and she could hear the swoosh of the mud when it would fall, and she could smell the fresh earth and moisture. Did she taste it? I don't know, but still, she was there. And so she began to slowly learn to sculpt. And she would sculpt small little figures, mostly for children. And her grandmother, remember her grandmother, one of the heroes of the Long March, took those to the local kill and had them fired. And she was able to sell these small little animals to the villagers so she could bring in finances for her family. And gradually she became discovered by the regional governor. And gradually he was brought in and talked with her about bringing her into the people's arts movement. And it happened. And Jade Dawn rose in the ranks of the arts. And her sculpture, well, her sculpture still shows from where she came. That's the story of Jade Dawn. Also, I would like to say, when I had this small group of storytellers, we called ourselves, hey, I have a story. There was also the summer conference of the Tejas Storytelling Association, which is one of the largest storytelling associations in the States. And they were looking for workshops. And my being as obnoxious about myself as I can, I put in, I too have a story. Storytelling with people who are challenged. I'm very careful with words and stuff like that. And so it was, we had 120 people in the room to listen to this group of great storytellers. There was one guy who cracked the entire audience up with he has cerebral palsy, a relatively strong case of cerebral palsy. But he talked about his adventures of driving his motorcycle on the black byways and picking up cute girls. One of the people with Downs talked about how much he loved to go outside and how much he loved to play as though the fairies and the elves, and he was Dungeons and Dragons, and he had this great persona. So these were the type of stories that were told. And the most important question that the panel, air quotes, panel asked the audience came from Thomas, the one who gave me that story of Jade Dawn. And Thomas said, can anyone here describe for me the color red? Well, it was a very interesting time. And they did a great job. So that's me. Hey, thanks a lot.
That is sorry. With both the cat both with the cat both with that made do but it cat that what are the it be work the build with cat border.
I didn't quite catch that, David, if you were talking to me.
Not to David. Cat.
David, were you asking us for a response to what David said?
No.
No. Okay.
Cat.
Your Cully's ready, is she? Cool. So we're moving on. Cully, your turn now.
Cat that
She's
what the little guy.
Sorry, I've got you. Hi, I'm Cully Cowley, and I'm a poet and a story writer as well. So I'm going to start with 2 poems and then a story about my birth. The first poem is from my new collection called Wonder Woman, a Wonder Woman. So that one is called Survivor, and it's a villanelle. It's very difficult to write, and it's in a nutshell, this is a story of my life. Survivor. Entered the world like an uninvited guest. I hid away, embarrassed. I was a disgrace. Flawed, I survived this sentence, a tough test. A child who was compared with all the rest. I was different an alien from outer space, entered the world like an uninvited guest. Benefits, wages kept me together, just I was a cash point abused without a case. Lord, I survived this sentence, a tough test. On display to men for marriage suppressed. I was a British visa for Asian men to chase. Entered the world like an uninvited guest. A lucky escape. Rescued by a husband, blessed with a family I could love and embrace. Lord, I survived this sentence, a tough test. My dreams came true and all were impressed. A valued writer, a poet, working mum, a place. Entered the world like an uninvited guest. Lord, I survived this sentence, a tough test. Next one is about cerebral palsy, and it's from my other book called Patchwork. And this one's dedicated to all ragdolls living with cerebral palsy. Silk, linen, velvet, cotton, wool, made from all sorts, textured fabrics, buttons, ribbons, hips made from zips, whoops a daisy and falling to bits. Her heart is made of golden fluff. Her smile is stitched, shining bright. Now and again she's not there quite. Her spirit shines like ultraviolet light. Droops, dangles, her limbs and neck, durable to all types of wear and tear. Broken, damaged, here and there. People stare, she just does not care. Battling, juggling impossibilities, shining diamond sequined eyes, always ready to give you a surprise. Like a cartoon, she'll always survive. Has trouble with her physical being. Words tangle in the laces of her head. Still figuring out what you've just said. Jerking, jolting to the day she's dead. Right. And before I read my story, I'm going to read a little short one, and it's called Born Drunk. As I walked down the street, old Asian women began to think. They stared at me head to feet. She's had too much to drink. Babbling nonsense, I wasn't torn. Yes, I said, God sent me tipsy, drunk. A party before I was born. Desperate for oxygen, but drank whiskey.
Oh, wow.
My story is basically the day I was born. I was born in northeast India in the state of Uttar Pradesh, UP, in a tiny village called Jarakoti, at the foot of the Himalayas near the river Ganges. I was the firstborn child to my parents. My parents had only been married just 9 months before I was born. It was a cold Tuesday, 15th of December, 1970, the day I was born. All relatives gathered around a clay house in anticipation, waiting for the first grandson to arrive. When they realized a girl had been born, all the planned celebrations diffused into saddened atmosphere. This baby was not a normal baby. I had a thick layer of jaundice covering my tiny, skinny body. My grandmother tried to wash the colour off, assuming it was just the colour of my skin. I moved very awkwardly with uncontrollable spasms. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. There were no doctors in the village, and not even a non-medically trained midwife did not know what was wrong with the newborn baby. My mother, who was only 16 years old, was unaware of what to expect and do during childbirth. She had to accept everybody's word for it. There was so much sorrow and distress on the day I had been born. I was born with so much negativity in the village's eyes, giving my mother no enthusiasm to look after her alien-like child. As the news spread around the village, relatives came to witness the strange baby, cursing me, saying all sorts of terrible things about the newborn and my mother. Oh my goodness, what has she given birth to? That bride from Punjab has not brought the family any luck, has she? What kind of kismet has she come with to this family? That child is not a child, but a burden and an unnecessary weight to the family. Our poor son will have to live with such a woman who produces such alien-like children. My mother had hoped to be happy in a marriage. This child had brought nothing but guilt, sadness, and depression upon her. Throw it into the river. No one will want to marry it when it grows up. You won't even notice after a couple of weeks you ever had it. You'll have more children, hopefully, better than this one. So you must look forward to them. Just imagine all the distress that you will have to live with if you keep it. Just think you've had a miscarriage and you'll be okay. They advised my mother, with this negativity in the family, all friends and family pressing on her, my mother almost threw her little helpless child away like a piece of rubbish. Society and culture had her believing all these lies about her babies. She almost hated and neglected this child for being born to her. This was the way of life in the uneducated villages of India. It was common for mothers to discard the children if they didn't want to keep them, especially if they were female and were born abnormally like me. It was my father who spoke, saying, "No, nobody's touching my daughter. She is part of me. God has given her to me for a reason. I will respect the will of God. Nobody will do or say anything bad about my baby or my wife. I hope I have made myself clear." "Her name is Kuldip Kaur Gotcha," he announced proudly.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing. What are the do that law. What that mean?
Absolutely, David. I mean, it showed great love from Cooley's dad and a wonderful story. Thank you, Cooley. So amazing.
Everybody that or we more
Does anyone want to say anything, or will we move on to John and co?
I'm still here after 50 years now. I'm 50 now.
Going strong.
Yes.
Can I
Baba,
say something briefly? Is that okay?
I'd like to say something after Baba.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. I was very excited about today. And as you know, stories is a telling of things. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they didn't. But I want to share a brief story about a friend of mine named Thomas, although I called him Tomas. Thomas was hearing impaired. He used to wear the, I don't know if they were implants, but he would wear them and he would speak to me and sometimes sign. He was teaching me about deaf culture. I was teaching him about African-American culture. But the story I want to share very briefly is a story of kindness. When you hear me talk about, you know you're too loud when your deaf friends ask you to bring it down, that was Thomas. And he would tell, I said, Thomas, you can't hear me. And he would say, but I can feel the vibrations, bring it down. But my oldest son, may he rest in peace, was very, very ill. And his job had messed up his insurance. So for a moment, he was without insurance. But he had a medicine that literally was the difference between life and death. Now, Thomas and I talked over the computer, but he was very intuitive, very empathic. And one day he said, what's wrong, Baba C? And I'm like, how can he tell something's wrong? We're on the computer. I said, I'm trying to figure out what to do for my son. There's a problem with his insurance, but there's a medicine he needs in order to stay alive. So Thomas said, he said, okay, how much is it? And for a half prescription, it was $400. And I said, I don't know where I'm going to get it from. Thomas says, meet me at Thomas Circle. No pun, not related, but it's a very famous circle. If you're a Washingtonian, you know about Thomas Circle. So I met Thomas at Thomas Circle at the CVS. Back then it was People's. And he paid for my son's prescription. He took out his credit card and he paid for my son's prescription. And I said, Thomas, I don't know how or when I'll be able to pay you back. He said, who said anything about paying me back? You do so much in the community. Let me do this for you because I know you love your son. Now, my son was grown. Nonetheless, he's my son. And David, true to his word, paid for that half prescription of $400 American and refused to let me pay him back. In fact, he made it very clear that if I've even talked about paying him back, he would be offended. I share this story because people with disabilities, challenges or not, have hearts, have souls, have stories, and they can be wonderful friends and they can be great allies. But most of all, I just wanted to share that story because to me, that was a story of love. He didn't really know my son, but he knew me. And I just wanted to share that. Now I'll do like John Rose says, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I'd like to say something to Cooley actually. And I just want you to know how really moving and I found your story. And I thought, you know, you didn't hold any punches, Cooley. You really sort of gave it to us, and some of us have experienced those things in life. And I thought it was like Baba said, it was a real story of love. And I just wanted to tell you how moving I found it. Really touched my heart.
When I first read it out to an audience, I cried, and I couldn't stop crying. I was really emotional, but this time I held back my tears.
I feel like I want to cry when I was listening to it, and I still feel a little bit tearful now. And I just thought it was a really precious story, and I'm really thankful that you shared it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But that really important. A lot disability the overall that need help that ella autism lite more. That autism the help that people really that know that what added a lot contributed to overall not together. But everybody know a little more about contributing. I did really know a lot disability overall that it really gave a lot doing that.
Absolutely, David. And it's wonderful that you're giving people a voice tonight to share some of those stories from, you know, across the world. So that's wonderful. Shall we ask John to do his bit now?
Dirty, a little old tiger. Can't spare everybody what it did the speed double dirty.
That's you, John.
All right. Well, first of all, obviously.
Dirty.
Sorry, David.
Oh, dirty.
And Lisa and Judy. Okay. Yes, sorry, you're quite right. I wasn't being inclusive. I'd forgotten about John's side. Compadres, Lisa and Judy as well.
Okay. So, first of all, I want to just say how wonderful I thought Coolies, but just very moving. And every 2 weeks we have our worldwide story round that includes poetry. And, you know, we don't want you just to come on to where we're dealing with disabilities and all that. We want you, you know, inclusiveness. You're welcome at the worldwide story round because we want to hear your poetry and we want more people to hear your poetry. So there's so you know, poet in your own right. So David, do you want me just to tell a little? We talked about me talking a little bit about what it was like in the late 60s for that little story of the wheelchairs and the ferries. Is that?
What?
I think he thought you were going to be talking about autism, John.
About what?
Autism?
Oh no, that's Justine down there who talks. Justine, don't ask me about autism. I have known nothing. I'm just obsessive.
Okay.
But no, just a very tiny little thing, just to show, you know, while there's still massive things to do, we've come a long way. I worked in a residential home which was for teenagers, and I was a teenager myself, and it was and we were just like, there was lots of people in wheelchairs and all sorts of problems, but and we were just their legs. You know, it was just like a giant youth club where we all lived together. And I thought, let's walk around the Isle of Wight, and which is an island for those not from England, or just off the south coast. and there was we go youth hosteling. And this is the 60s when such things were unheard of. But I worked from a great guy who said there should be no barriers. And so I first of all phoned up a youth hostel at the bottom and booked in for 4 beds. And my very last line was, by the way, they be on the ground floor? 2 of us are in wheelchairs. And while he was spluttering about the impossibility of it all, I put down the phone, so the booking was made. We got to the Isle of Wight ferry and they charged us extra for the wheelchairs. And I couldn't believe it, but I was only 17, so I didn't have that confidence. Right now, I might have given a less than subtle earful to the gentleman, but right then, as a 17-year-old, we just paid. And there was lots of that. We blocked aisles, not for a demonstration, but if people wanted us to kick us out of a cinema because we were blocking an aisle, because it was before the days when a seat was taken out, we said, well, call the police and see what it looks like in the local paper when you kick out a wheelchair. And that was kind of my experiences then. And to go now, when look at what's going on, and people like George, we can't see. The only thing I've got going now is I'm involved in this little charity called Musica, which takes music in. I wish those people had been around then. But for now, I'm shutting up because I'm getting the finger from David.
I did that little. That okay?
Are you saying we're passing on? Are you, yeah.
Yeah, I think we should.
Is Justine going to go next then, David?
Dirty.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
So I don't have a particular story, but I want to thank David for inviting me here. So as an autistic person, as an autist, my disability is not necessarily obvious when you first meet me, although I think some would probably question that. But I suppose I just wanted to come here to kind of really talk about sometimes I think we forget that we grow up in a society that has quite a lot of internalized ableism, and we kind of treat disabled people as different. So we're either inspirational or we're to be pitied. And I think it's kind of really important to just go, we're just like everyone else. So sometimes I think there's too much kind of emphasis on us being inspirational because, we're disabled and we can do stuff, but we're just humans. I think as well, and then it is sort of important to remember that there are invisible disabilities like being autistic, and sometimes again with invisible disabilities like being autistic, or any other kind of neurodivergence, we can sometimes go, oh, it's not a disability, it's a superpower. And I just want to put a hand up and apologize to all the people that I said that to when I was first diagnosed. Sorry, listen to the disability activists and just went, oh, that's awful, and went back and edited stuff that I'd said. So I think it's really important that if we do have a disability that we claim it, that we say so that as disabled people we're not ashamed of that word, and it doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. And I think that's kind of almost all I have to say, unless David wanted anything else to kind of add to it, but that was just kind of my main thing, to really ask you to think about your attitude towards disability, and if there is some internalized ableism going on, because society is inherently ableist and we don't notice it, and I certainly didn't notice it until I had that diagnosis myself. So I think it's really important to keep challenging and keep checking that we're not getting into kind of pity parties or into what we in the disability community call inspiration porn. Is probably really important, because actually we want to be included as humans rather than being impressive because we are disabled and doing stuff. We're capable of doing stuff. So she very ineloquently, but that's me.
When there is autism, the we got no garden, do work garden. Little darker out of the door.
Thank you, David. Lisa, this is your bit, really. And I think Lisa's going to, Lisa and David and I had a chat, and really we were chatting about
we go.
at the weekend, didn't we? We had a very long chat at the weekend, and we were talking about how storytellers could maybe think about those who are on the autistic spectrum when they're telling tales. And Lisa, do you want to say a bit about that? Just you tell us what works. Tell us from your experience.
It's all about, as well, what you're wanting, David, is inclusion. It's all about communication, because as we all know, everybody is an individual, everybody's different, and it's about knowing your audience. I mean, look at who's here tonight, and it's about just knowing what everybody's interested in. You know, it's about targeting your audience, targeting what everybody's wanting to hear, what they're wanting to listen to, and being able to represent that. You know, if it's, okay, I'm Justine, you're an autist, I'm an autist. You know, you might be interested in one thing, I might be interested in something totally different. And it's been able to, a good storyteller has been able to provide, improvise, to be able to please us both, basically. And I run a support group for individuals on the spectrum with additional needs, with other conditions, and Jackie has provided storytelling for our group, and she's had to be on the spot. You know, she's come fully prepared, and then the kids that she was given the storytelling to just weren't interested in what she was wanting to do, and she just had to improvise on the spot. And that's been a good storyteller. As I said at the weekend, it might be dinosaurs on the moon. You know, it's, you just have to be, you have to be able to improvise. A lot of people think that having autism is you don't have an imagination. That's rubbish. We do have imagination. We've got phenomenal imagination. It just, we have difficulties being able to communicate that. We have difficulties maybe interpretation or something. You know, it's not that we don't have imagination. It's amazing. We just need help to be able to communicate that, and we can do that through storytelling if we have someone there to help us with it. And that's where likes of Jackie or likes of another storyteller can do that for us. We spoke about having the tools, like if you're hard of hearing, or like David with sign language, or Makaton, or with visual representation. It's having all those different tools with really good facial expression, gestures, all that kind of thing. And it's not just about verbal language. It's not just about the written word. It's about using all of it together. Right. What I use, I say my son is multilingual. It's not that he can speak several languages. He just uses different tools to be able to communicate. And you know, that's a different language altogether. You know, it's about using PECs, it's Makaton, it's written language, it's gestures, and that's some things that if you're not in the autistic world, you don't know how to communicate properly with that person. Yeah, so I could just go on and ramble on. Jackie knows I can ramble on. Sorry.
Can I share something to illustrate what Lisa just said? Is that okay? Yeah, so I do street storytelling, and a couple of years ago I was street storytelling in Lowestoft, which is a great place to do street storytelling. And there was a teenage guy kind of leaning up against a post in a shopping mall, and I went up to him, my kind of like storytelling way. I said, "Oh, fancy making a story with me?" And his mum shouted over to me, good luck, love, he's autistic. And I went, so am I, love, let's go. And we did. And she stood there and witnessed me and her son make up a story entirely on his special interest. It was some comic book. So every time I went along, he added in stuff and we went backwards and forwards and we just had the best time. And you should have seen his mum. There was no way his mum thought that her son could, like, on a random shopping trip, suddenly engage in that kind of level of creativity. And it was just, honestly, it's the best feeling. And it is that. And I think actually as autistic storytellers, we have a little bit of an advantage in having, because we know all those channels, because we communicate them anyway.
Yeah.
So autistic storytellers telling to other autists, I love it. I had the best time. He had the best time. And I don't think his mum is ever going to look at him quite the same way again. So yeah, totally. Everything you said, Lisa. Yeah.
And that's it. It's just using that language. Like, so my son, if he's going too fast, I'll say it's Lightning McQueen, you need to go in meter speed, and which is reverse. So it's just being able to use that language. And yeah, it's just knowing your audience, and I think that's the key point. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough, David, or if you need any more.
What listened to what other lyric the other now the where are the middle with the what do the lot me middle it is that lot up the where are the it will that will not later about the spirit it does.
David, you broke up a little bit right at the end there. You said one more thing, and then I missed what you said after that.
Okay. The Speak. I didn't catch you, David. We're moving on to the next person. And I think, is that your friend from Canada? No, I'm missing it. Okay. No. I lived.
Lisa. Not listening. Sorry, I'm not listening. You're okay. You're going to write it down. While you're writing it down, I'm just going to say that, you know, we talked a lot at the weekend about this need to get the two worlds into one, and to really understand all the languages and all the ways of communicating. And storytelling is obviously a wonderful vehicle for deep communication. Babasi, do you want to say something while David's...
Yeah, I'll endeavor to keep it brief. Lisa and Justine, you reminded me of something. I perform for an inclusive and diverse audience, and I often don't know ahead of time if there's someone with a challenge in the audience. But I just want to share this with you real quick. So way back in 1950, I was sharing a story, and there was this little kid. He and I had the best of time. Flash forward, I'm doing a program for a civic engagement organization, and the coordinator for that stops and tells everybody, he says, let me tell you about Baba C. Now, I'm telling you the story, but it's not about me. He said, let me tell you about Baba C. 10 years ago, about 10, 11 years ago, he's doing a story, and my son is on the autistic spectrum. And I'm going, oh, he's not going to get this. He says, 10 years from now, my son was 7. My son is now 18, and he still talks about when he did stories with Baba C. I'm sharing that because we often put barriers that aren't there in the way of reaching audiences, but we do have to be adaptive. We do have to be interested. And sometimes we have to switch up what we're going to do, because a lot of times, sometimes there'll be situations where what you ordinarily would do is not the thing for you to do. But I just share that story because he's still talking about his time with Baba C. To me, that's more about a testament of him than it is to me. But I just wanted to share that real quick. Now I'm gonna do a John Rowe and go mute.
Okay.
I've got you now, David. So
No.
Do you want me to ask Lisa to tell us what she was telling us about how she went about teaching her son English?
Before that, hello,
Well, hello.
Oh, hi, Claire.
I think
So is Claire going to speak now, David?
I think
Claire, are you expecting to speak?
Only a little bit. I mean, I could say so. I say, as a storyteller, one of my biggest learning experiences was when I was doing a show in Edinburgh and we had a group, and I heard someone on the way in say, I hope this show is better than the last one, which always is a worrying start to any show. And he came in, I saw him in the audience. He was in the front row. He's wearing a shell suit next to his girlfriend or friend. And I thought, I better do a good show. And throughout the show, he wouldn't make eye contact with me. Nothing I could do could make him eye contact. And he kept on shifting in his shell suit. And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going down. Like this is going. And the really weird thing is his partner next to him was having a lovely time. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you going to be saying at the next show, I hope this one's better than the last show. And I couldn't understand why I was failing to reach him quite so badly. And afterwards, I found out that he was blind. And I had made all these assumptions about his body language, about what he was doing, about how he was responding to me, from not realizing and not being wide enough in how I expect the audience to react. And it was an incredible learning experience, is that don't put your expectations on your audience. Just because they're not responding the way you think doesn't mean that they're not doing, and there might be a reason why they're not making eye contact with you. I learned so much from that show, but I really thought, good heavens, I'm not reaching at all. And I have to say, you learn more from your mistakes than you do things, and I learned so much from that one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Claire. I think there's some really good
things.
Okay. David, yeah. Shane wants to say something. David. Okay. David, you need to go and eat, you're saying. I don't know if we'll still be here when you come back, but okay.
I will go back.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we'll still be here. If not, then we will hear your story at another time, okay? Because David, I know you have a very special.
David, can I just say, you've done. I hope you're back, but this has been the crowd you've got together for this Monday night has been phenomenal. So I think we give David a round of applause right now. Are you?
I'll go back.
I know you're coming back. You like those films. What's it? The strong guy, the governor of California, Schwarzenegger. I will return.
I'll be back. I was wondering how this would. I was wondering how this.
Okay, David, I have to go soon, but I will pass on what I have to do if I have to go before you leave. Okay.
Okay.
Go and eat. Go and eat. Well done, young man.
Right.
Go and eat.
Well, if he's not back in time, someone please convey to David. I was wondering how this was going to go down, and now I know how it's going to go down. It's going down grand. No, it's going up grand. That was not my middle finger. It was going up grand.
Yeah, it is indeed. So, Jackie, do you want to take over or shall I take over now?
Well, do you know who's coming next? I'm expecting a friend of David's from Canada to speak. He didn't actually mention who it was. It's not you, is it, Norman?
I think David wanted me to speak.
Ah,
but I had agreed with David that he has so much to say that there's really no need for me to speak at this event, that I would rather hear him speak more. And so we agreed on that. He wanted me to speak about some of the work I've done in the disability community and with people who are differently abled. I work with people with acquired brain injuries, and we do a lot of storytelling together. I help them shape their personal stories of their injury and their life prior to the injury. And we also work with traditional stories together. And I was speaking to David about that, and he was really fascinated with the stories that some of the people that I worked with have shaped. And he wanted me to speak about that, but I was more interested in his stories. But yeah, so I work with, I'm a storyteller, but I also work with people using their stories. I'm an expressive art therapist. So, and this was such a wonderful event. I enjoyed all of your stories. It really was one of my favorite World Cafe events. It was so inclusive and so powerful, and the stories were really wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Norman, did you want to say something?
Yeah, yes, I did. My biggest problem is biting my tongue throughout all of this, and I wanted to share some feedback stories that show more what I learned rather than how wonderful a person I was. Because I did work at a children's rehab hospital as an outdoor storyteller. I had listeners of all kinds, including 4 teenagers in induced comas. So it was a wonderful challenge. But it's not at that place, the hospital. I wanted to talk about one incident that shows the power of the children who are supposedly the disabled. Or as my friend Alan and I, after going through about a bit of wine, worked out the concept of dissing abilities, and which is to put them down. It was a grade 5 class. The children are all emotionally disturbed. The teacher had crayons and paper all ready and said, if in the first 20 seconds or so that they get too agitated, we'll go right to drawing pictures. And I knew enough at that time that I knew exactly what would happen for the one story that I told. They listened. They sat there and they just drew the story out of me, just solidly listening. And I felt it worked very well. And now I was asked back the next year to grade 5 class. All the others had graduated except for one young girl. I thought, well, that story last year worked very well. Let's do it again. they won't know anything about it. Before I had told my version of the story to a friend of mine who's said, Norman, that one little bit that said almost as beautiful. No, that's not right. Say as beautiful. And that's all I changed. The only little bit of the story I changed. And when I finished that story, and her rose bush was as beautiful as Green's own rose bush. And I finished my story, and a little girl marched up, the only one held back from the year before. And she said, you changed a part. You changed a bit. And she told me which part she changed. And so this so-called child of the emotionally disturbed category had heard and listened to that story far better than I ever had. And that's one of the point I'm bringing across, is that when I'm working with some listeners, special needs, if you will, there's listening going on that is as powerful as any one storyteller could ever hope for. And that's my wee story.
Thank you, Norman. I think, George, do you have something you want to say?
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I mean, John told me about this, so thanks for sort of letting me join in. This is really kind of profound seeing you all together. I think it's amazing, you know. I mean, everybody's got a story to tell and everybody's voice should be heard. But sometimes people whose voice should be heard the loudest seldom is. You know, it's one human race and we all bleed the same. There's no difference between any of us. And I think what you're doing is brilliant. And our charity, you know, we provide creative activities for people with disabilities or mental health, and it doesn't matter if it's storytelling or music or art or dance or whatever. It's just, you know, being able to express yourself, even if you're non-verbal, or in any manner that makes you feel better for doing it, is a massive thing. And it's great to see so many creative people coming together, because that's the power of creativity, and it can make a fundamental difference for somebody's life. I mean, I'm not a storyteller, but I can give you an example. A few years ago, we were doing a festival, and there's a kid with autism. Not now, that's my neighbour. So we're doing a festival, and we did a thing called Band in a Day, where we get 15 kids, teach them drums, guitar, write lyrics, and then we get them on the main stage of a festival. And so why shouldn't people with disabilities perform? Why not? Same as everybody else. So we get this one kid, and he can't do it. He refuses to do it. I'm freaking out and everything. I said, well, it's all right, mate. We sat him down, but how about if your dad comes on with you? So his dad's a really big guy, and he's standing behind his amplifiers, and you can just sort of see the top of his head. And the kid starts playing, and not only does he start playing, he starts shredding. And his mum's in tears, we're in tears. And the guy, this kid just nails it. And about 3 months later, we got an email. Suddenly, this kid who wouldn't say a boot or goose, was the coolest kid at school. Suddenly, his confidence had gone through the roof. Suddenly, he could express himself through music or creative activities. And I guess what I'm trying to say is creative arts, no matter what it is, can change somebody's life for the positive, you know. And more of that is needed. And what somebody said earlier about, you know, is why is the word disabled used? It's a horrible word. It's people. We're all the same, you know. That's pretty much all I've got to say.
Thank you, George. I can see Bob is itching to add something. And then Shane, who had his hand up before.
Oh, Shane, you want to you had your hand up before. Go ahead, Shane.
Jackie, can after those, Teresa keeps putting her hand up. She's just, you know, she's like the person at the front of the bar that everyone looks over the head of.
Oh my goodness. Okay, right, we've got Bob, and then we've got Shane, and then we've got Teresa. Thank you, John. You're the expert at this. Okay. I should hand back to you.
Okay, thanks. George, just hearing your experience sparked a memory of a real teachable moment for me. This was way back at the very beginning of my storytelling time. And I went to an elementary school to tell stories. It was the school where I had gone to elementary school. One of the teachers came in with a group of differently abled people in all different categories, and asked, would it be okay if these kids participated in the stories? And of course I said yes. All through my telling, there was a girl who sat in the front row, and I had never heard of autism before. The word wasn't even in my vocabulary, or it was probably in my experience, but I didn't know it. And a girl sat in front the entire time like this, with her hands in front of her face and her shoulders slumped a little bit. And I just, I pushed on and told stories. Well, at that time I was using masks, and I had a beautiful mask that was created for me of a mountain lion. And at the end, I gave kids an opportunity to try on the masks, and I witnessed a transformation in front of my eyes that I have never, ever forgotten. This girl who sat like this the entire time put on this mountain lion mask, and it was almost like a hood. It completely covered. It was three-dimensional. So it was a three-dimensional hood of a mountain lion. And I watched this girl, who was probably about 10 years old, transform herself into a regal queen, a queen mountain lion. Her body changed, her shoulders broadened, her whole being broadened, and she looked around regally this way and that way. And as I think about this story right now, I thought I sort of knew the lesson. The lesson to that story was, well, yeah, differently abled kids can be transformed, and they're experiencing things that maybe I didn't even realize. But something else, and this realization came later. It transformed me, because there are times when I am slumping for one reason or another, just out of bad posture, or maybe just not feeling too good. And suddenly I will remember that encounter about what it's like to just rise up and expand and look around, and the grace and the power in that. So she taught me, not only did she experience something in the storytelling, but she taught me a lesson that still reverberates today. So thank you, George, for reminding me about that.
Pleasure.
So shall I come in? Yeah. There's so many things I could say along the way. I had to write down a couple of things to remember what I wanted to say. But just a couple of little anecdotal things, really. So I do bits and pieces with MenCap, and I have done for quite a few years, and I do quite a lot of storytelling for them as well. And one of the side advantages, if you like, is every now and again I see one of them in the street in town. So it's whoever they're with, it's either, oh look, it's Shane the storyteller, or it's, oh look, it's Shane. And I always go over and talk. So then it's, oh, what are you up to? Are you going into town, are you? And what you going to buy? And it's just a normal daily conversation about what you're up to, kind of thing, And I think that's just a sideline from the performance and what goes on in the room when the storytelling happens, and all those different things that happen. Just that outside of the place, that recognition and that face that lights up or whatever, and then there's this conversation, and I might have my partner with me and say, oh, this is Claire, and there's kind of like this conversation. And I just think, if I didn't see these young people there, I wouldn't have those conversations with them, because, well, I wouldn't know who they were, and I just think there's this extension of something. So that's one little story, and I want to tell perhaps an even smaller story. I did some work with a different group in my hometown of Bury St Edmunds. I haven't lived there for quite a few years, but asked to go and do so. And I did a whole day with a group of people with learning disabilities, different levels. And I did a bit of drama with them and a bit of, just a bit of drawing, and we did all sorts of things. And I had them carrying imaginary feathers and then things that were heavy. There was nothing there. It was all imagination. And then I did this thing with an imaginary flower. And I went around and I said, oh, what colour's the flower? So I asked each person and they told me what colour flower they saw, but there was nothing there at all. So there was, oh, it's red and it's blue, and I went to this one guy. It was so funny, and he struggled with this bit of the interaction. It just didn't compute for him, for whatever reason. He might have been shy or whatever. So and this is the bit someone was saying earlier about improvising and being in the moment and what you have to do. And I'm so intuitive, and I just went to him. I said, okay. I said, you wouldn't just hold the flower for a moment, would you? And he took this. There was no flower there, so he wouldn't describe it and he took this imaginary flower off me and held it, and it was just, it just blew my mind, and I just thought, my God. So in one moment he wasn't engaging at all, but I just went with it, and I just went, would you hold it? And he held it, and I just thought, wow, what's going on, and it just teaches you something every time. Yeah, and that's my two little stories.
Thank you, Shane. Teresa, you're up.
It's been quite a while since the points were raised that made me want to speak, and so I'm not sure what's going to come out now. But it was to do with Lisa and Justine. There was something that they were talking about, and you, Jackie, about working together with people that have, storytellers to enable them. And I just want to bring to the fore mental health, because I have a complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and it affects me in all sorts of ways, and I can be very, very ill, and quite often if I come to one of these and I'm feeling okay, but sometimes I'll have to go off camera because it's too much concentration, or there's too much stimulation. My body gets into an alarm state, and I become, very sensitive to noise. So I always appreciate it when John asks everyone to mute themselves, but it has a big impact on my concentration, and a friend of mine is, because I am known as a poet and a storyteller, but it's excruciatingly difficult for me to tell a story, because of the amount of work that I need to do and the limited abilities I have to do that work. And I'm supposed to be telling a story for my friend's birthday in California Saturday week, and I wondered perhaps whether there could be some sort of skill sharing to enable me somehow. It's kind of like an appeal, I suppose. And so it was Lisa and Justine and Jackie that sort of provoked that sort of outpouring. So I wonder if perhaps we could meet another time. I've sent Jackie a friend request, so maybe on Facebook, so maybe we could do that. And I just wanted to thank everybody for the contributions this evening, because people don't often think of mental health as a disability, but I've had this disability since I was a child, and I only was diagnosed as an adult, and I'm still not receiving any treatment, and I'm on the waiting list, and I have had to learn to manage by myself, and a lot of the time, with mental health, there's a lot of discrimination, which I'm sure people with other diagnoses experience, but there's also a lot of misunderstanding about how it affects one physically as well. So there's a whole area here that I think is coming to the fore in a really great way. And I love that the World Storytelling Cafe is addressing these issues. And I really thank David Thompson for bringing this, you know, onto the agenda and allowing us to get together and have a conversation like this. And I would like to propose that we do another one.
Teresa, thank you. I think that would be wonderful, because I am aware that I have to go soon because I have another meeting tonight. And I would love to see David's story or hear David's story. And I feel we're just touching just beginning to scratch the surface.
I'll just find the I'll just find the diary, and I'm going to write in another note. Just excuse me, folks. And before you go, Jackie, you will have a date.
Brilliant. Well done, Teresa.
I've got to find the diary first. Ah, here it is.
Fantastic.
The chaos I live in. That's why I have a cloth behind me. Right. So we got another Monday night. At the moment, so we could do another one in a couple of weeks' time, or do you think that's too soon? Or should we do it on 3? No, we don't want to do it on the bank holiday.
Do you want to have a different theme to it, or as in more structured?
No, I hate structure. Nah. Don't ask me to organise anything structured. But let's get the date first. So
I thought it was structured, Claire.
I thought it was structured. I mean, we've gone through. We've been going an hour and a half, and it hasn't fallen apart.
I didn't mean that in any way negative.
You know, I'm not scaffolding that's fallen down quicker than that. So anyway, let's go back to date. We can either have it in 2 weeks' time on the 24th, or in a few weeks' time on the 7th of June. What are our thoughts? So let's be democratic about this. Jackie's quite important to all this. Jackie, Cooley, let's see. Lisa, I love Justine. I know Justine's it's really difficult time-wise. So I don't want you to commit. You know me. I know about Justine's life, but Jackie.
David, you're back. Listen, David, we're just organising another date, okay? We're organising another date. So either in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time.
David, we were so delighted with the fact that you brought all of us together to talk about things in this way, that we want to carry on and do more.
Part 2.
So the idea, David, is to because the time's getting on and people have got to go and also have their dinner. So the idea is John is suggesting some dates where we can come back again and do it all over again. Obviously it'll be different. So you've done a great job, and yes. I really, in your absence, I was thanking you, because you've brought us together and really opened up a really great story, a narrative for us all to be part of, and it's really important. Really, thank you.
But it really important.
Yeah.
Let everybody know lot different out there. It really more to do it more little lot different doing that is key on doing that. Now we need or die a little more. Lot David.
Brilliant. And David, we're going to start by having one more Monday night. Okay, so we need to decide a date because I have to leave in 1 minute's time.
So, can you, right, David, I'm taking over for a minute because I know, so right, I'm the boss now for 2 seconds. You can be boss in a second.
Okay.
Right. Put your hand up if you would like another one in 2 weeks' time, which is Monday the 24th. Let me see your hand up. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Who wants one on June the 7th, which is about 4 weeks' time?
Don't mind.
It's a tie.
4 weeks, okay.
Well, David, you can. You will be governor again for that one. So, what is your choice? 2 weeks' time, the 24th, or 4 weeks' time on the 7th of June? Life is full of decisions. Make one.
But okay at the bottom.
You're too democratic, David.
Okay, I'm going to let Cooley choose. So Cooley can make a decision.
Cooley, you choose.
Cooley, what are you going for?
4 weeks.
Would be right.
4 weeks. Okay.
4 weeks. So
choose 4.
7th of June for your diaries is 2 worlds in one again. We might change the title, but as a working title, and we will have David in charge.
Can we do that? Okay. No.
David, I am really sorry, David. I have to go. I have another meeting, my love. Well, but in 4 weeks' time, we can carry on.
We'll have a big discussion. Right now,
Thanks,
everyone...
everybody.
Thank you, Jackie. Can everyone... I'm taking over. Go big. Everyone, all the participants, a big round of applause. Big round of applause for David for bringing us all together. And Ali for providing the magic carpet as usual.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Missy.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Ali.
Bye, bye, my friends.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, wow.
Till the next time, David.
Wow. Wow.
I'm gone. Talk to you later, David.
Bye, bye, David. Bye, bye, Babasi.
You take care, Ali. Until the next time.
Thank you. Babasi.